Did anybody see the reaction of Mauricio Suleiman's face when he had to put this purple belt around Terrence Crawford? Man, he did not like it. And that moment when I watched it yesterday was probably the funniest moment of the fight, right? So I think there's a lot of people that say just give Crawford his due props. We will give it to him in this video, right? So he ends up beating the two biggest hype jobs in probably boxing history, Errol Spence and Canelo Alvarez. We're going to break down Spence. So Kell Brook, the IBF champion at 147, decided to jump up to pretty much cash out before, I believe, his Errol Spence fight, right? Gets his face broken against Golovkin. Spence and the PBC forced Kell Brook to defend his title way too early after breaking his face, right? So Errol Spence breaks his face again in something like 3 months after his surgery, something like that, right? To win the IBF title. Okay? I believe, and I'm not looking at BoxRec or anything, I'm just going off of pure memory, so a lot of these details could be wrong, or revisionist history, or revisionist memory, right? So Errol Spence goes against Sean Porter, gets beat up by Sean Porter, in my opinion. I think there was a lot of people that thought Sean Porter beat Errol Spence also, right? So Errol Spence unifies the WBC, I think it's the WBC, and the IBF, right? He gets in his car crash, right? So Spence gets in a car crash. He comes back, and he's completely washed, right? At this point, I think even in my videos, I thought all of his fights were fake, even kind of leading up to, you know, the Brook and Porter, right? So he fights some of these guys who were there to kind of just collect a paycheck and go. He fights Ugas. Ugas's title was fraudulent, right? Where Ugas, he got his face broken against Pacquiao. So Pacquiao broke up Ugas's face. Ugas goes to defend his title against Spence. And I actually have some of these videos and pictures of Ugas where months after his fight with Pacquiao, his face was still swollen, which means, I mean, it can mean anything from a bone bruise to like a bone bruise is basically broken bones, right? But not to the extent of like a complete break or whatever you would call it, right? So Spence breaks Ugas's face, which was already broken again, to become the 3-belt title holder. Now, Crawford himself fights Jeff Horn, who fraudulently got it from Manny Pacquiao, in which when Crawford beat Horn, was signed with Top Rank, and everybody thought it was going to lead to a showdown with Pacquiao and Crawford, in which many people, including myself, believed that Pacquiao would have won that one easily based on his fights with smaller, faster, more energetic, high motor guys, like even if he had beaten Gamboa or Henry Lundy. And there were some few other instances where he kind of got exposed a little with his boxing skills, right? So he gets his title, and during the course of that long run, there's like a 6 or 7 year, what would you call it, ducking of either the PBC or Top Rank, whichever one, right? I believe it was both, because I believe both guys wanted to fight, but their promotion didn't want to lose their guy that they were pushing and investing in, right? So Top Rank ended up investing a lot in Terrence Crawford, and they got nothing back for it, right? In the end, they got nothing back for it. So Crawford beats the shit out of Errol Spence. Errol Spence hasn't fought since. He was a shade or whatever it was, right? He was a shadow of himself. And even when that fight was happening, all of the quote experts had a lot of inside sources tell them that Errol Spence was not even a shade of what he used to be. right? And so we saw one of the first instances in which most of the quote experts who were calling it a 50-50 fight in not only like skills and politics and monies and whatever was saying that it was I'm not gonna give the probability, whatever it was. It seemed like it was 99 to 100 were picking Crawford, right? And so it led a lot of people to believe, wait, what happened? What happened to make it this, whatever, besides the car crash, right? So he fraud checks Errol Spence. Everybody is happy, right? Everybody is happy. Everybody who wasn't riding, what we call it, Errol Spence, for the longest time, even after his car crash and after, Porter, which happened, I think, the same weekend or whatever it was, right? So, which is awesome, right? So I think he fraud checks him. Awesome. I think I didn't give him the props for doing so, right? Because one, it wasn't a challenge. Yeah? So, talking about on a greatness scale, I would give it a right? But when you're looking at it from a political side and, favoritism and all of this stuff, it's actually pretty awesome that he was able, with the help of the financial backers, to get the fight with Errol Spence and to beat him by TKO, if not the scorecards, right? And so now, going into 7-minute mark, going into the Canelo hype train, in which many of us knew that Canelo Alvarez was a fraud. Most of his fights beyond the first Golovkin fight, after, right? So beyond after the first Golovkin fight were pretty much all bogus, to the point where a lot of these guys weren't even trying. Some would say that Canelo was trying his hardest, and the other guy was just playing the big brother and just, losing on purpose. I think the questions here with Canelo were, is he trying his hardest or is he in on it? And I think that question was answered last night, where the pace where Canelo was going at was pretty much the same as all of his other fights, which, let's say if they were on the level, Canelo might have been able to eke out a split decision win, right? If they were real. The only thing with the business is that the wear and tear would not allow him to have this crazy long streak of almost, 7 years of getting all of these huge paydays, right? Canelo loves his paydays. Okay, so I put a picture of a script on a desk and it said part 1 of 2, because Canelo has no other choice of taking another payday unless it's against Crawford or Benavidez, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about the politics, it's not really politics, it's just business, right? So the business would favor Canelo to the point where he makes so much money that you are just a fucking A side to fucking J side, as T Street would say, right? Or because you're not a B or C, or you're not any side, right? You have to just take the deal and leave. So Turkey and whoever the backers are, probably just Turkey himself, right, puts 200 million to Canelo, 50 to Terrence Crawford, and probably another 100 million to everything else, right? So it took hundreds of millions of dollars to just get to eke out a split decision win against Canelo because one, Skipper's scorecard had Terrence Crawford like 10-2, but some of those, I think Skipper probably just gave those 2 rounds to Canelo just to give it to him, right? Now, that wasn't my scorecard. I didn't even score it, right? So for the first 4 rounds, I had it, I think 3-1 Canelo, or maybe 2-2. Yeah, so after that, after Skipper revealed the script, I did not even bother to score it. However, it looked like Canelo, in my opinion, without scoring it, it looked like Canelo was winning some of these rounds in which, if it were a split decision, again, I'm not counting, it should have been something like 7-5 for Canelo, right? Because Crawford did good work, I think, in maybe 3 rounds where it was like, I think it might have been like 8, 9, and 10, and then the last 2 were iffy, except for the 12th round in which he almost knocked Canelo out, right? So, fraud checking Canelo, and here's the thing, right? So, I'll go into it in another video. So he fraud checks Canelo, wins all the belts, makes Mauricio Suleiman put that fucking fake belt around his waist with, he looked like he was gonna fucking vomit. It was fucking hilarious, right? Because he had to get down on his knees and everything to put it on him. That was the greatest part of the whatever. I have to rewatch it, right? I have to rewatch it, but I think he had to get down on his knees. He had this look of disgust on his face as he put that belt around Crawford. It was freaking hilarious, right? Now, going to the script, again, I have no idea if Crawford actually won or not. I saw this punch count that actually showed that Canelo actually probably should have won, like, pretty much the whole fight. Giving a shout out to Michael Stock 88. He said he had scored it 9-3 for Canelo. Which I believe every time I had actually scored a fight came, I think, pretty close to a lot of you guys who comment on my videos, right? So sometimes I private my videos to not get banned basically from YouTube because I've already been shadow banned, right? But the people that know my channel. And sometimes I have to private a lot of these videos because, you know, things are said and whatever it is that politically would not be correct. Siding with wherever YouTube is coming from, right? The left. So we'll get into that in another video, but I mean, Crawford was the guy to fraud check Errol Spence and Canelo Alvarez. And I think he did it to a degree where it was just, again, I can't confirm if he beat Canelo, but I think it's hard to say if it's great, but I think there was a lot of people that cheered for it because they knew who Canelo was, but were so, what would you call it? They were riding that gravy train. They were riding the gravy train the whole way to ever actually admit what everyone else who wasn't riding the gravy train were saying about Canelo, right? And Canelo is a good fighter. We'll leave it at that. But when you're looking at good fighters, like, can a good fighter be a good fighter and not be number one? You know, there's a lot of people that have to put people at number one, and it's like, he doesn't have to be number one, nor is he number one to prove that he's a great fighter, right? And so going into all the other stuff, I've already addressed it. It's like, right? I've already addressed it. And so it makes it seem as though there is no appreciation to the things that Terrence Crawford did achieve last night, in which, you know, if you wanted to say he beat the machine that was behind Canelo, and I'm wording it in a phrase to I'm wording it in a phrase in which he might have not actually beaten Canelo, right? But he had beaten the Canelo machine for that one night, in which I looked at the scores and he won by split decision, right? Even though the broadcast was saying he was winning like pretty much all 12 rounds. So it took hundreds of millions of dollars to derail the Canelo machine to get a split decision, whether or not he earned it or not, right? So, I mean, to give him his props for ending or exposing, I'm not going to say he ended the hype train of Errol Spence and Canelo. Maybe the gravy train, right? So, gotta give props to Turkey Al Sheikh for putting up so much money to do that. Thanks for watching.